I hope you will enjoy not just today, but the next 4 years. Let's go build a working Washington. Thanks a lot. Take care. Thanks, guys.
Well, that was Governor Jay Inslee in his first swearing-in ceremony as our 23rd governor back in 2013. Turns out it wasn't just for 4 years, but it'll end up being 12 in office. We're getting the news this week. He won't seek re-election after 3 terms. So who will replace him? And what work is left to do while he is still governor? Quite a bit when it comes to our state's drug possession law. Plus, what impact will Amazon's push to get workers back on the job truly have on downtown Seattle? All this and more this week on Seattle News, Views, and Brews, your coffee break political podcast. I'm Brian Callanan. I'm a host on Seattle Channel. The views expressed here are mine, and I'm joined once again by my co-host, David Croman, transportation reporter for the Seattle Times. And David, you had a great tweet a few days ago about dressing your kid up in Mariners gear, something I did with my kids too. And it almost feels like you fated them to a life of disappointment ever so slightly. Do you think so?
Yeah, I do. I wish I could offer them the Braves or the Astros or
sure,
any other team.
I know.
But at least it's not the A's, I guess.
This is what we have going for us. That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
Well, David, thank you as always. Thank you also to our background noise sponsor, City Grind Espresso, on the first floor of City Hall. Thanks also to our show patrons. The Seattle News, Views, and Brews sticker campaign is rolling, folks. We really, really need you to join us as a supporter of the show. You can get your very own decal for just a $5 a month pledge. We're featuring our sticker action photos on our show as well. Intern Rob, thank you again for sending in this shot. We're stuck on you too, my man. Appreciate the support. Thanks also to Converge Media. We partner with Converge to air the video version of this podcast. Check it out on Converge's YouTube channel Wednesday nights at 7. Off we go with right here, right now. Well, the huge news this week, Jay Inslee is not running again after 3 terms as Washington governor. There's no term limit for being a governor in our state, but Inslee is our only governor besides Republican Dan Evans to serve for 3 consecutive terms. David, I know we're going to talk a little bit about what he has left to do, especially with our drug possession law in a minute. But first, I want to talk about who's going to run in 2024. Seems like Bob Ferguson wasted no time with this announcement.
Yeah, Bob Ferguson wasted no time. Hillary Franz is teasing an announcement today. We assume that she's going to run also. You know, in some ways, the more interesting question, I mean, those two were always going to run. People
right, the Attorney General, the Commissioner for Public Lands. Keep going. Mm-hmm.
Right. People thought maybe Dow Constantine, and he was making hints at that in 2020, but he said he's not going to run.
Right.
So really, I mean, the Democrat, who the Democrats are, that's not a surprise and hasn't been a surprise for a while. I mean, the question is going to be, who do Republicans put up? And do they think they have a better shot in an open primary or not? You know, it's tough sledding these days for statewide Republican candidates, but you know, that'll be kind of the more interesting side to watch. And then of course the reshuffling that will come, because, you know, Inslee was in some ways represented a big bottleneck in the Democratic Party, because there's all these officials kind of waiting to take that run and then leave their positions behind. And so you get this cascading domino effect of, you know, who's going to run for Attorney General, who might want to be Lands Commissioner. If it's state legislators who leave their position, you know, who runs for those, you know, there's a whole, that's at least in the short term, that'll be interesting to see kind of how that all plays out.
Yeah, you do feel that there have been some people who have been preparing for this for many years. Bob Ferguson, certainly one of them, put out a 3.5-minute ad just a few hours after we heard this Inslee announcement. So he's been ready for a while, has built up a big war chest, which might turn into a bone of contention with the PDC. We'll follow up on that story later on. I should also point out, in case you missed it, our insurance commissioner, Mike Kreidler, will also not run again. He's been under pressure to resign for some racially insensitive remarks made to some employees for some time. He's not coming back in 2024. But back on the governor here, I just wanted to get your take on the legacy that Inslee leaves behind. Definitely a green governor, very concerned about climate change. Any other things that you see about Jay Inslee and what he's leaving behind in his record as Washington governor?
Yeah, I mean, I think for Democrats, and, you know, especially progressive Democrats, he's viewed favorably. He's pretty clearly the most progressive Democrat or progressive governor that Washington has ever had. He took some pretty big swings and connected on a few pretty major climate policies, you know, the carbon auctions and fuel standards and, you know, committing Washington to phasing out gas-powered cars by 2035. Those are all fairly big deals. And so if that's your priority, he represents sort of something pretty genuine. I think he also, for all those same reasons, is fairly reviled among Republicans in the state. Who's seen as kind of just big government in its worst form.
And that really, if I can interject here, David, I saw that as well. We saw an announcement from the Republican Party. Let's turn the page on the disastrous Inslee era. I think they really saw him as an authoritarian, certainly during the COVID shutdowns.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. Is he was? Part of this is because COVID came to Washington first.
Yes.
But when all was said and done, he took some of the most stringent steps around COVID. He says that the science backs him up on that. And, Washington does have one of the lowest rates of death and infection in the country.
Right.
But also, there's some nuance. There's clearly some nuance in the data around how much those measures helped. And, of course, especially with schools and things like that, it was a tough couple of years. And so, I think the Republicans of Washington State are celebrating. At the same time, I think at this point, Inslee represents a fairly standard Washington Democrat. And so, I don't know that, I think Bob Ferguson and Hillary Franz, neither of them would represent enormous departures from the kind of governorship that Inslee runs. So, Republicans might celebrate today, but if and when one of those two wins, then they're kind of it's kind of the same situation in a lot of ways.
Right. Ferguson has a lot of appeal for the different work he's done with opioid drugs, and I know Hillary Franz is in the mix too, so we'll see what happens there. And then, yes, as reviled as Inslee may be by the Republicans, they still have to come up with a candidate after what was a fairly embarrassing Lauren Culp run 4 years ago. I should also point out the legacy that Inslee leaves behind. Mental health was really trying to change that system. I would say, just from my stand on it and from what I've seen, I don't think that has changed all that much. And that's something that a governor will inherit, the next governor of the state of Washington, trying to fix that system, because it is not fixed. And I would love to jump into that at a later point, David, but I did want to wrap up this topic with just one Jay Inslee story. 2012, election night. Somehow I had managed to tear my Achilles tendon earlier in the day playing hoops with a bunch of the dads from my school. And awful day. And so it was election night, though, and you got to go, right? Because it's election night. You're not doing anything about that. So I grabbed a pair of crutches, took a lot of pain medication, and went downtown to the West End, because it was not only Jay Inslee coming in, but legalized marijuana and same-sex marriage. So there it was. It was a huge night. And I just remember end of the night, I got into the same elevator with Jay Inslee. We're heading downstairs, both exhausted, maybe exchanged 2 words by the end of it. So there I was at the start of it, and here we are at the end of it. I do need to move on to this other piece here when it comes to what the governor has to do in the next few days and months here, and that's a special session here to fix our state's drug possession law. It was invalidated, of course, by the Supreme Court 2 years ago in the Blake decision. The legislature put a temporary measure in place at that time. Now that time's up, so if the state cannot figure out a new system by July 1st, our state would essentially have a system of legalized drug possession. Already a number of different cities and counties are saying, we'll put on our own laws here. David, I thought this was a very embarrassing end of the session for everyone involved, especially the Democrat majority here. What sort of compromise do you see coming out of this special session when it comes to balancing the need for drug treatment with the need for the involvement of the criminal justice system?
I'll say first, the other day, I think it was Friday, I was down by Pike Place Market, and I almost literally ran into a state legislator. It wasn't a formal interview, and I'm not sure he agreed to be interviewed, so I won't name his name, but described the session. He said the session was like a great vacation but then at the end of it, your flight gets canceled, because Democrats were the Democrats were feeling really good about the session that they had. I mean, they got a lot of their priorities done. Except, as this one legislator acknowledged, the only thing people are really going to remember about it is the failure to do the Blake bill. So, I think embarrassing is probably the right word, and I don't know that anyone on the Democratic side would dispute that. The tough thing, I think the real sticking point is going to be, it seems like it's going to be around this question of preemption, which is, can local jurisdictions kind of go further than the state does? Because I think a lot are going to want to, especially in more conservative parts of the state. But that also raises some complications around, the same complications that we're going to see if nothing is passed, which is you have kind of patchwork policies throughout the state. So, I wouldn't be surprised if what ends up happening is the Democrats have to pass this solo. But, that's not going to be that's going to be kind of a heavy lift to get the progressive and moderate Democrats all on the same page alone. I mean, as we saw, lots of Democrats defected from that final vote. So,
15 Democrats in the House decided no on this final package. Keep going, please.
Yeah, well, and as we saw, Republicans are more than willing to let the Democrats twist in the wind in this because, I think I don't know that anyone is totally blameless in this, but, at the end of the day, the Democrats hold the Senate, House, and governorship. So, I think the Republicans did play a role in this not passing, but that is never going to be who takes the blame for this because they were not the ones in power. And so it is really, at the end of the day, up to Democrats to kind of get their own house in order on this. I think, who was it? Andy Biggs maybe said, happy to do a special session, but it's not like we haven't been talking about this. So, I don't know that just calling a special session guarantees that something gets passed.
No, you're right. And there's a possibility they could extend the temporary measure they've had in place, which has been this misdemeanor piece with the idea with diversion beforehand. But I think it's one of those situations where it's an argument, as I see it, between a misdemeanor. Is this some sort of misdemeanor we connect with potential suspects here, which carries a 90-day sentence versus a gross misdemeanor, which can carry up to a 364-day sentence. And I think that feels like the main argument point right now. How much do we want the criminal justice system involved in this? How can you make that a lighter touch such that you can push people towards treatment? That has felt like the big push back and forth to me. How about you?
Yeah, I think that's right. That's kind of the essential question underpinning this is what role does the criminal justice system have in getting people to treatment? I think as has been pointed out, there are not a lot of people being arrested right now for simple drug possession. They're just not enough. They're not enough cops for it. There's not enough space in the jails for it. Just not a priority at all. So, in that sense, it's hard to know exactly what the difference between a misdemeanor and a gross misdemeanor will mean in practical implications. But, you could argue that one gives a little more leverage, at least especially down the road for people to kind of be pushed towards treatment. Exactly what that looks like, I don't know. So, in some ways it's kind of about like what message Washington State is sending and which I think is, you could say is symbolic, but I don't think it is. I think there is some heft behind what you're saying the rule is, even if it's not always being enforced. It'll be interesting because, like you say, 105 days to talk about this, and they didn't get anywhere. Where are we going to go with a special session? So hopefully we'll see some activity on that this May and see something passed on that state level, because I think that patchwork could be a big, big issue legally, certainly, for the state of Washington. All right, we're moving on, and let's talk housing. We now have a social housing developer board in Seattle for the first time ever. What does that mean for the city? And how's that group going to interact with the plan to increase the Seattle housing levy this fall? That's next on Now Hear This. Well, in case you missed it, Seattle's first ever Social Housing Developer Board was officially seated last week. This is the group overseeing what 57% of Seattleites voted for with Initiative 135 back in February, a new social housing public development authority, a PDA. Councilmember Tammy Morales is really overseeing this effort. She noted that Seattle is the only city government in the U.S. that now has a social housing program in place, but she says leadership from social housing residents themselves will guide the way.
Residents are involved in both micro and macro decision making. In a way, we're sort of in uncharted waters here. But in another sense, we're walking down a very well taken path, and this board will be the ones leading us.
I should point out Montgomery County in Maryland has a social housing system. That's the only other example in the United States. Plenty of other social housing examples around the world. And David, I really wanted to bring this up because I'm looking at what the council has set up here, establishing a board for social housing, while at the same time really pushing for an increase to the Seattle housing levy. The mayor wants to triple that levy up to $970 million. The council's fine-tuning that. It'll be before voters this fall. And my question is, as it was before the social housing vote, are these two systems going to get along with each other? What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I think that's kind of the million-dollar question, or I guess we could say $200,000 question, because that's what they got from the legislature.
From the state, right.
I mean, to start, I mean, the board or the people who passed this estimated they needed $1 million in startup. They got $200,000 from the state because the city so far hasn't given that money.
Right.
We'll see. I mean, I guess we're about to find out how badly they need that next $800,000. But that is kind of barrier number one: is can they actually get the infrastructure set up and the people hired to move this forward, and where do they get the money to do that? And then, I mean, really the question that has dogged this effort, and I think has inspired some skepticism even early on from some like housing advocates, is, we have a lot of structures and nonprofits, and there are a lot of players in this space already between, the Seattle Housing Levy, nonprofits, of course, Seattle Housing Authority, King County Housing Authority, you could say the mandatory housing affordability fund. There's money, and it's all being spent. It's all being spent right now. And so I guess, and the backers of this initiative have always argued, it's not about breaking up the pie further; it's about increasing the size of the pie. And so, Seattle has not found its limit on how much money it's willing to spend on social services. So they might be right. They might, having this new thing in place may in fact inspire people to give more money or to fundraise more money. But, as you pointed out, this housing levy is going to be triple its size. Sound Transit's really taking a hit on people's property taxes already. So, there's a lot of taxing and spending going on already. Whether that, whether we've reached the limit of spending on housing, we'll see. That's the question.
And interesting, just to help people differentiate between these two here, the Seattle housing levy generally will help people that are making, let's say, 50% of the area median income or lower, and really focused on those people who are making that 0 to 30% level. With social housing, this new program put in place by Initiative 135, this is a program that helps people up to 120% of area median income. So the whole idea is to have a cross-section of different incomes happening here. And also, let's say you're in one of these Seattle housing levy type of homes, and the limit there is the 30% of area median income, and then you get a job that starts making more. Well, you wouldn't be able to live in that housing anymore. The social housing developers are saying, well, guess what? If you're in this new system where it's got this system where you're set up to go all the way up to 120%, with a cap on this being 33% of your income in terms of rent, what you're paying here, they're saying it allows for a little more flexibility there. So I'm interested to see how that goes too. And I guess just this levy, as it goes up over the next couple of weeks here, we're going to see how the Seattle City Council tweaks this, but it could be more than $970 million. So still, I would have to say the jury's still out on that one. Did you have any thoughts on that, David? Is it going to go higher than $970 million? That's a lot already, but I know the City Council's always pushing for more with this.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a read on that. I do remember when the Move Seattle levy was first pitched. It was sort of this shock moment when it was almost $1 billion, and now, I would say that the housing levy didn't get nearly that kind of reaction. I mean, partially it's been a few years, but the city is, I guess, getting a little more comfortable with these big asks, but also believes that is kind of the scope of the problem.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot more to it. Well, thanks for breaking that down with me, David. And I wanted to talk about another issue happening downtown. If you've seen a little bit more hustle and bustle in the downtown Seattle area this week, it's not just the May Day activities for workers' rights out there. Amazon is pushing to get workers back in person 3 days a week. That's off and rolling. They wanted to have that in place on Tuesday of this week. David, I just wanted to get your take on this. What impact do you think, about 55,000 workers they're estimating here, what is that going to have on a downtown business core that really has been struggling to bring employees back to the office?
Yeah, it's going to be a big impact for South Lake Union. I mean, I think the question is, does that spill out into the rest of the
Trickle
city?
up,
Does
yeah.
that kind of reverberate? I'll say that Seattle is putting a lot of eggs in this basket. Maybe not, maybe appropriately. I would say that really the beginning of the lockdowns and the beginning of getting to where we are right now started when Amazon first shuttered. And, I think there's some credence to, our infection numbers were lower than a lot of other cities. And I think that partially had to do with Amazon shutting down and then, setting the tone. And, when Amazon shut down, all these other companies felt comfortable doing the same and felt like, all right, if Amazon's doing this, we're going to do this. So now the question is, can that work now the question is, can that work in reverse? If Amazon opens up, are other companies going to start? I think what's going to happen is other companies are going to sit back and see, does Amazon see mass resignations as a result of this? If the answer is yes, they might kind of hit the brakes. If the answer is no, then I would say that kind of gives permission to other companies to start forcing their employees back.
Is there a flip side to this, though, is my question, because I know groups like the Downtown Seattle Association, the Metro Chamber they're really pushing the city to try to offer some financial incentives to these different companies to make sure that they're bringing workers back downtown. Give us some tax holidays, maybe let us pay a little less on our Jumpstart payroll tax, things of that nature. Do you see that negotiation happening here? It's a very interesting thing to talk about. Hey, you want workers downtown, City of Seattle? Guess what? You're going to have to incentivize that. Where do you think that discussion goes?
Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. I hadn't actually heard that was a discussion. I would be surprised if the city council was quick to offer those incentives, especially to companies like Amazon, and especially at a time when the city has really leaned heavily on that Jumpstart tax to buoy its budget, which has taken a pretty big hit recently. So, I think absent, maybe the capital gains tax, now that that's constitutional, at the state level, eventually you could see some rolling back of the B&O tax as the capital gains tax goes up, some kind of rebalancing happening there. But I would be surprised if Seattle City Hall has the appetite to do that.
Yeah. Interesting stuff happening right now, and we'll see what happens with those numbers in terms of vacancy, in terms of workers coming back to the job downtown, sitting at about 43% of pre-pandemic levels in terms of office, people back on the job in their office in downtown Seattle right now, and that's stuck that way for the past several months. All right, we're moving on to our next topic here. A major thoroughfare has finally opened up on the Seattle waterfront, but is it the kind of thoroughfare that promotes the traffic safety concerns Seattle is so keen on? David's got some details on Transportation Talk. David, you recently wrote in the Seattle Times about Elliott Way officially opening to traffic not too long ago, a few days ago, connecting Alaskan Way and the Belltown neighborhood. The roadway is officially Zitzalalich, I'm going to get that right one of these times, as named by the city of Seattle there. The ceremonial name there from the Lushootseed Little Crossing Overplace. I want to make sure I get my nomenclature right here. But I did want to get bigger picture here. At least there's some debate on this from what I've seen. Is this too big a road, too many lanes going on, or is it a safe passage for bikes and pedestrians? What have you seen happening here?
Yeah, it was baked in a while ago. I mean, they weren't going to change this at the last minute, but I think the fact of it sort of finally coming together and opening a dispute over this road that is a few years old was sort of rekindled, which is, it's a big road. It's four lanes of traffic. It's in the same place that the viaduct once emptied traffic into Belltown. And so the argument against it is, this is a really busy area for pedestrians. It's right below Pike Place Market, right above the waterfront, and so the question became, why are we putting 4 lanes of traffic through this area and replacing what most people thought was a good thing to be torn down. The counter argument, of course, is there's not really great connections for freight and sort of movement of goods to and from the waterfront. Yeah. Anyone who's driven along Alaskan Way and has tried to cut up to Belltown has probably at some point gotten stuck by a long coal train and waited for 10 minutes or whatever it might be, and this bypasses that. And there are bike lanes on it, and it provides a bike lane. It provides bike lanes that did not exist before, and it provides a connection that did not exist before if you were a bike rider. In fact, I will probably use this on my bike ride into the office. But again, they're pretty narrow bike lanes. The sidewalk itself isn't huge, and so in some ways it's a moot debate because the thing exists, but it's not a moot debate in the sense of people who are looking toward whatever the next project might be and looking at what exists now and sort of questioning, was this the proper process to go through, and does this make sense?
Yeah, and you think about it too, this is years of process we're talking about here when rebuilding the Seattle waterfront. I know that there's some consternation over how this road is going to be used and safety, et cetera, but in some ways, though, this is an exciting thing because we're pretty close to the finish line when it comes to all the road fixes, the ramp coming down from Pike Place. We're looking at a really completely new waterfront in the matter of, is it a couple years, David, 2025?
Yeah, they're saying mid-2025, so that would be, 2 years from now? I mean, this is one of those projects where when it's announced, you kind of can never imagine getting to the end because it's a big project. And I think I was like 12 when they first started doing construction, preparing for Bertha to dig.
Right.
I have very few memories in which the waterfront is not under construction. So yeah, Coleman Dock, the new Coleman Dock is set to open later this year. And then the big Overlook Walk is set to open kind of late 2024. And yeah, they're looking at mid 2025 to wrap this whole thing up. And so that, I think for the people behind this project, some of the frustration around the criticism is that, look, we're not done. It doesn't look great right now in some respects because we're still a construction zone, but they're sort of urging people to be patient and see this finished product, and they're confident that people are going to be happy about it.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, we need to wrap up. I know you've got a kid to look after there, my man, so I want to make sure you do that. But I did want to point out that also this week, I just ever so slightly, it's cries of joy, I'm certain. In wrapping up this week, also marking the passage of legendary Canadian songwriter and musician Gordon Lightfoot. I know we drop into the classic rock every now and then on this show, David. Do you have a favorite song of his? I promise I won't sing it.
Well, I like the Sundown. I will say I like Gordon Lightfoot. I'm not the biggest fan, although we did take my father-in-law to a Gordon Lightfoot concert at Emerald Queen Casino a few years ago, which was hilarious. So I do have a funny memory.
Oh no, I hope everything went okay.
Yeah, everything went okay.
Okay, good. If you would read my mind is always my top one there. So R.I.P. Gordon Lightfoot. David, I thank you for sharing with me as you always do. And thanks to everybody who is listening to Seattle News, Views, and Brews, where you can always find out what's brewing in local politics. This podcast is on Apple, Spotify, wherever you might listen. Thank you for listening. And also, please find Seattle News, Views, and Brews on Patreon. Show your support there. We could really, really use your help. Thanks for watching on Converge Media 2. We'll see you next time. Seattle News, Views, and Brews is an independent production of Callanan Media Services. Copyright 2023.